Hi, I'm Phil Skipper. I'm the Head of Business Development for Vodafone's IoT business. I'm going to be talking today about the impact of the embedded SIM in the connected car and the range of services that the connected car can now support.
It was interesting, you mentioned skin in the game, and we took a slightly different approach. We bought an automotive company called Cobra, and that has now become a business that we have called Vodafone Automotive. And the reason we did that was exactly as you said, to go and buy the expertise and the capability and the relationship, because we saw this. The connected car is going to be something that's big. It's really interesting to a mobile operator because there's a high degree of churn. New cars come in all the time, old cars go out, and they're starting to use more and more bandwidth. So since we've been providing connected cars, we're seeing the bandwidth per vehicle about double. So that makes it very, very interesting for operators. When we bought Cobra, we came with a range of aftermarket products. So these were ODB dongles, they were windscreen sensors and so on. But we also acquired the telematics component, which is embedded telematics. So if you take a Porsche Macan, for instance, everything in that Porsche Macan is provided by us, from the box that goes in at the factory right the way through to the Apple Watch that you can unlock it and heat the seats and so on. So we saw that and we said, you know, it's great aftermarket for fleet and so on and bicycles. I think in connected car, don't forget connected bicycles. If you go to Asia, there's more bicycles than there are cars. Good idea to connect them. So we looked at this and said, that's absolutely fantastic. It enables us to do UBI and infotainment and insurance and so on. But what comes after that? And we actually realised that being able to embed the SIM is the way forward. And what I want to do about today is just talk a little about what the embedded SIM does. So there's a couple of things as soon as you embed a SIM, is that one, you don't know where that car is going to end up. It could end up in any country on the planet. Car manufacturers don't want to have two SIMs, they much prefer to have one. So we actually produced a product called Internet in the Car, which takes the same SIM which is embedded in the vehicle and enables you to have two contracts. One is effectively with the OEM to provide the remote maintenance services, the diagnostics of the car and the maintenance information and so on. But the other one opens up all the B2B to C services around infotainment and watching things in the back of the car and Wi-Fi hotspots and so on. The value in doing that to us is clear. It actually generates much more bandwidth to us. But the OEMs are also then really interested in additional services that operators can provide around the regulatory regime in which their cars are going to be operating. So we ended up not only having to do the technical piece, but all the commercial piece around how do you roll this out from country to country within the right regulatory regime, if you're offering internet in the car and so on. So that embedded product is now sort of in there, and once you've got it, it starts to generate a really interesting ecosystem. So unlike the aftermarket, when it's embedded, you know the connectivity is always there. Because you know it's always there, the risk about providing services attached to the car are lower. You can actually meter the consumption much more efficiently, and that's not just consumption for one service, but consumption for multiple services. The asset is protected, you know where we are. You can streamline the whole logistics, you know when the car is going to be here for a spare battery or whatever, and you start to give choice and ease of use. So from going from an aftermarket business to an embedded SIM, the opportunity is now in those services that go around the car. And a good example for us is we used to offer something called stolen vehicle tracking. So we would tell you where your stolen car was. And that's pretty unhelpful because you don't want to go and try and get it back from a man with a crowbar who's got your car. So now we offer a service called stolen vehicle recovery, which is actually where we tell you your car's been stolen and then we get some big bloke to go and get it back for you. That's a much safer way of doing it than me going, oh, I know where your car is, go and deal with that madman. So all of a sudden you start to get these services that come around it. And I just wanted to present one, which is Share a Porsche. This is in Holland. And what it enables through the fact it's got an embedded SIM is multiple friends can share the same car. So they can book it for weekends to impress their girlfriends or mothers or whatever. They can share the cost. And because it's got embedded connectivity, you can meter all of those services. So you can meter the insurance, the petrol, the consumption, the maintenance, and so on. So who would have thought that Porsche would be able to sell cars to people who are under 30 years of age? All of a sudden, here's a way where people can have the experience of driving a Porsche. And Porsche love this, because if you get drivers into Porsche early, they then go and buy the next one, and the next one, and they become Porsche drivers. So when you looked at this, there's, we keep getting obsessed about connectivity and an embedded SIM for autonomous driving and all those things. But I think before you get there, you're going to see this real evolution in the way the embedded SIM is used to build this ecosystem of services around the car. I just want to give some examples. Drive Now, the BMW Sixt partnership, relies on the connected car, and they do some really clever things. So when you get in the car, they download all your points of interest into the sat-nav. Now, that is a really good service which enables that car to be personalised, all based on the embedded SIM. Telematics, insurance. A good example there is we have something called crash reconstruction. If you have an accident, we tell the insurance companies straight away where you are, how fast you're travelling, how hard the crash was, what's the orientation of the car, how many people are in the vehicle, and we send that off to the insurance company so they get something called first notification of loss. So they can then be first to offer their driver and the other driver the fixing services. So if you get both cars to your garage, the cost of dealing with the claim is much reduced. So all of a sudden you're offering better service and driving cost out. The other thing, and I think this is one bit that operators need to sort of bear in mind, is you have to somewhere put the people back into the IoT. So just telling someone there's a problem is not good enough. You actually need to be able to respond to that and use the information you've got to enact and intervene so you actually get the outcome you want. So stolen vehicle recovery is the perfect example. You know where the car is, we don't tell you, but we actually have what are called secure operating centres across the planet, where if you press the button, it goes to one of our people and we will sort the problem out for you. So I think there's, it's not just this dead-end service, you've actually got people involved in it. And then finally, this is the trend that we see going forward. So we've gone from aftermarket, the added components, to the connected. We're now going to embedded, and we're seeing the whole market in connected cars split into two areas. One is around these operated services, where you're sharing the asset between multiple people in the ecosystem, and that generates both huge cost advantage because you're sharing the hardware, but you're also enabling the car to become a vehicle upon which to base service. I must apologise for the puns in that. I did try to avoid them. The second area is where you then move into the automated driving, where the embedded car then becomes essential. And I think that's where a lot of the focus is today, about how do you make the car the autonomous car of the future by using the public networks that we're all going to provide, 4G plus and 5G. So if I were just to quickly sum up, what comes next? Well, certainly in the connected car, 4G plus, 5G, autonomous vehicles, vehicle to infrastructure, that's certainly coming, but that is a few years away. Security, that's here today, and I think we've had some conversations about that this morning. That's something which is very key to the success of the connected car. You're going to see more and more devices on the vehicle. So the devices sort of don't forget about the hardware. And then, of course, you get the servitization and bundling. Beyond that, you then need to have some capability to deliver those services. So the way we see it is really that people love the car, and that love affair will continue, but it will be about what it does as opposed to what it actually is. And I think as people move away from vehicle ownership into buying vehicle and mobility as a service, you're going to see that become much more prevalent. This attitudinal shift will drive some of the biggest opportunities in the connected car, especially the embedded car, around linking services to the vehicle. And then finally, for the operator, there's certainly benefit around 4G and 5G. And I think with 5G, the fact that it's now about control is going to move the operator much closer to the centre of the ecosystem for the connected car. And I think that's going to be one of the big trends that we see over the next 4 to 5 years. So, even though I was late, I have 10 seconds spare, which is pretty good for me today. So thank you for your time.